If you're going to spend your time doing the best you can doing shit, then why do it? If you're going to spend your time giving to future generations some of the benefits of your knowledge, maybe that's a way of having a legacy, that's a way of having a kind of morality so that Bob Boyle's never going to die and I'm not going to die, that something's going to live. And I think that that's a pretty valuable thing.
Elmore hit a home run from both sides of the plate in the same inning. I want to say Bill Miller hit a grand slam from both sides of the plate in the same game. Also with the Cubs. I believe that's true.
With 2 out, nobody on. Norris Hopper is the batter.
If you're a hitter and you hit a fly ball to the guy on third base, you're happy that you get the guy in, you're happy it doesn't cost against your batting average. But man, you want to double in the gap. You don't want to sacrifice fly. You want 2 runs to come.
I think everybody's here by accident.
What do you mean?
Well, at any moment, anybody can get canceled. And then there are all those things that we do to ourselves. In my case, I overindulged in almost everything. I smoked too much, I drank too much, I lived too long. All of those things.
Yeah. Now, how old are you now?
97,
Yeah.
98 in October.
I started at Paramount as a draftsman. We worked our way up. But then the first real job as an art director was at Universal for Hitchcock, called Saboteur.
Come on, Fry.
Oh, I did one ahead of that. Was called Wolfman. It was a wonderful cast.
What year is that?
39.
39, huh? Oh. Well, you span, what, 3/4 of the history of film?
A good bit of it.
Okay, let's go. For my part, I could talk about the times when there was a true collaborative effort on the part of some wonderful filmmakers. These were people who had a very strong appreciation of not only the human condition, but of their social obligation in portraying that condition.
Right this way. Okay. For a portrait. Hello.
Hi. Hello.
Thank you.
Our next winner will be the honorary Oscar winner, Robert F. Boyle.
Okay, Mr. Boyle, to your right, please. To your right, please, sir.
What a cake. Is that film, Bob? What do you think? Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah.
Today was a strange day in that, well, recently they were all at my 90th birthday reunion. And we said that we should probably get together more often, time presenting a certain problem. So it seemed only the right thing to do is to have a little reunion before it's too late.
But I heard the film people wanted to have a limousine.
It didn't seem to me fitting to what we were then, and as a matter of fact, what we are now. It seemed to me better we just meet and go over old times. Al, how are you?
Hi, Bob.
Everything going all right?
Well, so far.
Hey, you guys really dressed up.
Oh yeah, Bob.
I didn't understand.
We're celebrities. Didn't you know that?
Well, I'll put on a tie before
Like I was telling Al, we all used to wear jackets and ties in the industry, but now you look like you're shot out of a cannon. That's the look you want. Oh, you should
out of the cannon.
You should have holes in your knees there and everything. Then
I got holes in my knees, but that covered.
So, Bob, do they know what this is all about?
Well, we're having a reunion. We're the only three left.
We're the three surviving. I'm the kid at 84 years old. I'm the young one.
The three of us octogenarians, our professional life started at Paramount in the early 30s, although we all really started at USC in architecture. When I was thinking about that, I began to wonder, why were we in Hollywood? And what was Hollywood?
See, after all, we were pretty young, about 23, 24 years old. Bob Boyle was there ahead of me in the Paramount Art Department. Bummy came in about a year after I did.
One nice thing about Paramount in those days, they didn't have big drafting rooms. We had two people to a room. And Bob Boyle and Al Nozaki, they were in one room and I was in another room with Walter Tyler. So that's where we all got to know each other so well. We're working together for all those years,
Where are we going now?
Yeah, what are we going to do?
We're going to Paramount, isn't that right, Dan? Yeah, to the old stamping grounds.
The three of us old bastards.
See, I've got metal knees and there's...
We're going to meet.
Yeah.
For a reunion, sort of.
We wouldn't meet with a limousine.
I wouldn't. Would you? I'm not a limousine person.
I hate limousines.
That's what they remind me of, funerals.
My mother was born in Galita.
Oh, yeah.
And all of my family, my mother's family are buried in the cemetery there, and that's where I'm going. Gosh, that's a beautiful cemetery. Right north of the Biltmore Hotel there.
I think you'll look nice there.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Paramount was an odd studio anyway. It was a variety studio. MGM, you could tell, that was fantasy land. Young girls lived in penthouses. All the men were rich, even though this was in the heart of the Depression. Most of us were struggling to get out of it. And people like Al and Henry and myself couldn't find any architects to work for, but the studios were booming. Fantasyland was at its height, and that's where we got our jobs.
A summer night in Venice, a lady's heart to win. All you need is the aid of a love serenade played on a
Casanova.
Oh.
Yeah, there were some wonderful sets in that.
I want you.
The Paramount backlot had scale to it like no other studio, and they flooded the whole street, and they put the barber poles and the gondolas and the awnings, and it looked very good, as I remember.
You remember we used to have those Monday night showings of the films and also of the screen tests.
Right.
And Bob Hope's screen test was on one night. I remember nobody laughed.
He was terrible.
He was awful.
What street are we crossing, Bob?
Hollywood Boulevard. A junky street, always was, but it was a little bit like what I was talking about Hollywood being the blank page on which you can write anything. We have the Egyptian theater, we have the Chinese theater. We don't have any American theaters, really. All of these things were crazy, but they were imaginative. And it's what Hollywood was. And the reason that it became what it is and why we all felt comfortable working here was that you weren't influenced by outside cultures.
Oh, that's right.
I was saying this morning, if you worked in New York, you could make a good picture, but it would be about New York.
Right.
And if you lived in London, you had to make it about either the London city or the countryside.
Right.
But it was always with an English pressure on you. Here we didn't have any of these pressures. You could just imagine whatever you wanted to do.
So we did everything. Bali,
And the art director-
Zanzibar, Singapore.
Oh, yeah. See, because just catty corner was Oblat's. Wait a minute here, Al.
It's okay.
I didn't mean to leave you here.
Sorry, I'll-
grab my arm.
Hold of Al.
I've got him.
I'm not a good one because my balance isn't that good. Are you okay, Al?
Boy, 3 tottering people. I don't know how you're going to do this.
Bob, that sign that says Paramount up there, is that?
That's always been there.
I spent 24 years going through this gate. 24. You spent many more, Al.
Yes, I did.
I left in 1960.
Well, I had to drag you out. At Paramount, I shared an office with Al for several years. We had also the relationship of starting our lives at the University of Southern California. So our relationship became, he was like a brother. And this was the library up here.
Yep.
And that
Gladys.
main entrance, is it? That passage through?
Yeah.
I got a call from Hans to come up to see him in his office. You knew how we used to run.
Yeah.
And I rushed out of the library where I was.
Where was the library?
Right up here.
Right here in that room.
And then there's a breezeway through.
Yeah.
And I rushed out, crashed open the door, and I ran right into this woman, little woman. And I recognized her as Mae West, but I said, I'm sorry, and I left. Later that afternoon, I was in the staff shop, and I saw them making these very thin plaster breasts. And I said, what the hell is that? I had to be in the staff shop. And they said some dumb kid ran in and broke these Mae West brassieres. They were solid, you know, to keep up those.
Was there a shop here when you worked?
No, this was the hospital right here. I
This street
frequented-
is almost exactly the way it was then.
Yeah,
This street hasn't changed.
not a bit. It's just painted better, I think.
Yeah.
I think Paramount did a marvelous job of aging on all their sets, and I think I became very aware of aging. Look at aging. How does a fireplace age? How does it age around the door handles? How does the bottom of the door age? You know, where it's kicked and this and that.
Bobby, those pillars, so people don't know. Would you go over and hit your hand against it?
And what?
Well, it's
looks
fake
good.
plaster, yeah. I think the aging is pretty good, Bob. You know,
It is
these
good.
corners are all nicked up, and that's something that we don't have anymore, good agers. And the new people don't do that. And I look at some of these new movies. I want to tell you, some of these women, I won't mention names, and they're in a house with a family with young kids, and there isn't a mark on anything. So, I mean, they must be well-disciplined children. That's something I miss in pictures nowadays, you know. We don't have good agers anymore. A few, but not too many. You know, it's strange how, you know, as they say, I've been very lucky. I moved to Universal during the actors' strike. They offered me more money and a 4-picture deal. So I stayed on, you know, and so I won 2 Academy Awards there, you know, for To Kill a Mockingbird and The Sting. But I first worked with Hitch at Paramount, and how I got with Hitch? In my wildest dreams, Henry Bumstead from Ontario, California, and I was young, would never work with Alfred Hitchcock, you know, let's forget it. I'll never forget, I think maybe this Vertigo or the second picture, and Hitch was sitting in his chair, you know, with his lip out and this and that, and I said, Hitch, what are you thinking about? And Hitch says, I'm thinking about my next film. This is all terribly boring. And the pictures I did with him, he had 2 or 3 things on a film that he was very adamant about. Like on Vertigo, where he's hanging from the roof and that you got that feeling. The rest of it he kind of left up to you. Well, I think what I learned from Hitch is I carried out my same theme of trying to make sets look like the people that live there. He liked to see what the person does that lives in this room. I can remember in Vertigo, now Scotty was an ex-cop, you know. Now you wouldn't have a lot of bookcases for him, you know what I mean? And I thought, well, at the time I was a stamp collector, a philatelist, so I thought, well, I'll make him a stamp collector. And I don't know this day whether we ever saw him, I don't know, but I did have that set up in one place in the room, you know, a desk and all the things that you have for stamp collecting. Well, Hitch loved to see these things. It shows that you're thinking, you know, and that about the person, and to give him character. And he was very conscious of that. We were called draftsmen then, not set designer. In those days, we used to use carbon pencil, and then we would smear it with a brush or cotton or this or that, and then pick out highlights with a kneaded eraser, and then put watercolor on them. And Bob was just marvelous at that, so Nozaki too.
I'm not being bashful when I say we all did a pretty good job. One day we got this letter from the construction department commending the Paramount Art Department for excellence of their working drawings, you know. Never happened before, never happened since. My name is Albert Nozaki. I'm the art director of War of the Worlds. And this is the original model of the Martian machine as used in the picture.
That's how the Martians, yes.
We had a lot of freedom to do almost anything we wanted. In other words, we could make sketches, illustrations, we could make set models, we could go down on the stage and supervise in construction, we could talk to the director if he wanted to.
You can see some of this, can't you?
Al, how much can you see?
Al, can you see any of it?
No, I can't see it.
You really?
The disease is a pigment of the retina. That's how come the name. It's retinitis pigmentosa. So I could do the most detailed drawings you could ask for, and it never bothered me. When the Ten Commandments came along, DeMille never said anything. Eh? So finally, we were about halfway through the picture when one day I was in the office alone with him, and he said, Al, he says, I understand you have some visual problems. I said, he wanted to know what it was. So I told him, and he said, well, he said, whatever you've got, it hasn't affected your work any. And that was the end of that. It wasn't until it closed in much closer than that that I couldn't see. But I tell you, take good care of your eyesight, though.
Where were you born?
Tokyo, Japan.
And how old were you when you came over here?
4.
Ah.
My gosh.
He was already designing sets.
Yeah.
No. And he has a box under his arm, and he comes over and, very apologetic, and he says, here are your things. You're closed out of the studio.
Oh.
You can't.
He said it on the same day?
Just a matter of hours.
My gosh, unbelievable.
Well, but they put you in, what was the camp's name?
Oh,
Manzanar.
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 What was happening to Al was terrible. We couldn't understand it. And of course, we didn't believe there was any reason for it. But in those days, with the Japanese having bombed Pearl Harbor, didn't seem to be anything we could do about it. It was just a fact of life. And then suddenly, the fact of life deprived me of this relationship, which I had treasured.
Al's the only Japanese American that I know of that said that going to the camp was a good thing because he got to make a lot of contacts in Chicago.
I've tried, because Al is blind, I have tried the last years to, a number of times, to go pick up Al at his house and then go over and see Bob at the AFI or meet him in a restaurant. Because see, Bob and Al were very good friends, and they were in the same room, for quite a few years. They made about 3 or 4 takes, and then he says, what's wrong now?
Come on, Bob, you're wasting film.
Film broken. What are you using for film? Conundrums? My friendship with Bob has continued all these years. We keep in touch, and I try and see all of his films and call him, tell him what I think about him and this and that. And Bob is just a giant in the industry, in our branch, the art directors. He did, 5 pictures with Hitch? I did 4 with him, but I think Bob did some wonderful things for him. Oh gosh, I think that North by Northwest, he did a fantastic job. The house, the crawling up on the faces, and that, it's unbelievable. And that's real Bob Boyle, I tell you. I don't know if I could have done it. I guess maybe, but maybe it wouldn't have been as good, But I certainly admire all the things he did. He just, and Bob is tops, let's face it, tops in his business. And I hope he's around much longer.
You miss working on these movies, Bob?
I miss those days when we were all together. The community was great then.
Yeah. But not so much today, huh?
Well, I don't think so as much. But on a stage, when you get together, it's always a family.
Sure. Sure.
Considered to be your most significant weakness as a candidate for the President of the United States? The fact about all endorsing me.
I don't know. I mean, I think my strengths outweigh my weaknesses. I have plenty of weaknesses, and I kind of work on them. But I think that I'm a person who's an optimist. I try to look at the half-full glass rather than a half-empty glass. The only way they can turn around a city like New York, that was considered the crime capital of America, and turn it into the safest large city in America, is to kind of inculcate some of that Ronald Reagan optimism and look to try to create results that people thought were impossible, and we did.
What do you think of that? This guy.
Did you find any faults in
I don't like any of them.
I saw you looking attentively, waiting for him to say something. No, I don't. And I think
Shall we go?
Sure.
Because I have to take my
These are a set of quality
my oxygen thing.
Let's take our time and let's go.
Yeah, let's go.
Can you tell me the story about the Eagle's Nest and how that influenced your...
Well, it's only, I guess I was about 5. And I happened to be here in Los Angeles. We lived on a ranch in the San Joaquin Valley. But my father thought I ought to go to this movie. Well, as far as I remember, this eagle carries off this baby to its nest. I don't remember the rest of it because I was, at 5 years old, I was so terrified of the eagle and the fact that I could be carried off to its nest that affected me about films for quite some time, I'll tell you. Finished with North by Northwest, and Hitch had this short novella. He asked me if I'd read it, and did I think we could do it. When I read it, I was impressed by the mood of the piece, and the immediate thing that came to mind was a painting by Munch, the Scream, which seemed to be a scream against what was happening in the world. And I put down on paper some thoughts I had of the kind of location, the kind of situation I thought it called for. And I took those sketches to Hitch, and he said, well, this seems to be reasonable. But at that time, he hadn't even arrived at a script.
If Hitchcock was still making films today?
Oh, Hitchcock? He would have loved the electronic systems, the digital effects. He would have used them, no question. But he would never use them for their own sake. He would use them to tell his story. And I think that would be maintained today. I think in my own past, films like The Birds could have been very helpful using electronic means. This was the most objective shot in the whole picture. Some people have thought this was a bird's point of view. But Hitchcock always felt it was no one's point of view, and he called it God's point of view. This was made from a bluff overlooking Universal Studios. This was an old parking lot. This much here was about the only set we had. And the rest of this became a matte painting, which was not just an ordinary matte, but it was a very complex matte, which had many aspects of it. What made it particularly complex, we had the birds, which had to be rotoscoped. And then we had smoke and fire. So you could only go to the matte line with the smoke and the fire. And then Al did separate pieces of smoke. We
estimated there were maybe over 30 pieces of film that went into this one shot. It was an amazingly complex piece of film.
Well, we went up for locations, you and I, once, but later on when they started shooting up there, I was still down below doing storyboard, and then he sent for me, and then when I came up there, and that everybody was there.
Yeah.
Everybody was there.
True.
The prop, the decorators, the whole thing were there, and it was nice. You can talk to people.
You know what would be fun, Harold, if we took a trip and went back up there, see whether it's changed much. Would you like to do that?
I mean, it's been 37 years, Bob.
Because I remembered fondly the relationships between the members of the crew was as close as you'll ever get on a film.
That cafe is still there. I'd like to go in and get a sandwich.
The Tides?
The Tides, yeah. Well, I was given the script, a certain part of the script, and told to do a storyboard on the script. I proceeded to do it, and I got some great ideas, and I got very excited, and I did this script, and I was so proud of it. Now, when we went to see Hitch, he looked at it and said, "This is really very good. This is really very good, but I can't use it here." And I thought to myself, boy, this is a rejection if there ever was one. And when I went back to the art department, I realized, reading the rest of the script, that this was an anticlimax, and this was no way you do a picture, because a picture is like a symphony, is like music. It builds up, it goes down. You're the composer. You have complete control over the music and the emotions that it gives forth. When I got out of the Army, went to the Art Students League in New York to learn how to be an illustrator. I went around with my samples and I wasn't treated very gently, so I decided New York was not the place for me. So we came out to California, and I got a job as a salesman. But I brought my stuff around to all the different studios. One day I get a call, "Are you the guy who did these drawings?" And I said, "Yes." And he says, "Can you come to work Monday?" I said, "Yes." Well, I never did those drawings. Whoever did those drawings now may be selling insurance. But I started in at 1949, and I've been there ever since. That was it. I just held on.
We got the location. Everybody was aware of what we were doing, and I think this kind of helped the story, the narrative. Because it started in San Francisco, which was an area that Hitch was very familiar with. And then we came up here.
Well, another thing is, when we were down at Universal in the art department, remember we were told that Hitch likes to see us with ties?
Oh, yeah.
And I wouldn't have done this for anybody else. I wore a tie on that picture.
Right. And a white shirt. As a matter of fact,
Oh, yeah.
that's why I have a white shirt on today.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I thought. Also, I don't have any other good shirts.
It's a good reason. There were some scenes there that Hitchcock wanted the car going from left to right, and there were no mountains behind it, so Albert painted all the mountains behind it just so that the car would be going left to right. Remember that? It was a kind of a mat that nobody ever suspected was a mat. It was also when she was on a little boat on the lake there, or the bay. He painted a backdrop there.
Yeah,
with little white houses.
That was one place you could see the town. Albert painted the schoolhouse into the long shot. See, now the school is up here.
Oh, there it is. Oh, for God's sakes. This thing wasn't here, Bob. Was it?
I don't recall this at all.
No, when she was standing at the thing, they looked out all over.
And you could, from here, there weren't all these trees.
No, I know. Well, they got a nerve.
Well, where are you?
I'm right here.
You know, that's my blind side.
What, your
My
left?
right eye.
Oh.
So I can't see whether you're there
well,
or
my
not.
right eye is blind too. Now what can I
The
tell you?
blind leading the blind.
What can I tell you?
When were we here in the birds? How many years ago?
30 years.
Could those trees have grown in 30 years?
There was a
big?
shot from her house, her point of view out here, and there was nothing out here. Where did this house come from? Was this
I don't
house?
know. It was all bare land here, I thought. Although the fences were like this. I must say I'm amazed. What's kind of sad is to think that these trees grew to be such big trees, because I always thought we were here yesterday. Time does funny things. Huh. Why don't I get those pictures? And this is the way it was then with no, well, we were right.
It looks like 100 years ago. You know, I remember it being very cold. I remember it being cold because Hitch would drive up to the Brenner house and lower the window. You would go over
right,
and he'd say, "Where is the camera hitting her?"
Yeah.
And you went, you know, and you hit your chest over here. Is good. And then he closed the window.
Yeah.
And they went ahead and shot it.
From Hitch's standpoint, if he had a special scene that he wanted to control, he could control it better on a soundstage.
He had a group of camera people go out to the bay at San Francisco and shoot these birds. Yeah, they had to sit there with raincoats.
Yeah, with raincoats while the birds crapped
bird
down.
droppings. Oh yeah, those were the good old days. Today they could have done this with a computer. After what they did with the dinosaurs,
I think it's a cinch now.
there'd be no problem.
But again, it's what the story is, isn't it?
It goes back to that.
It won't.
You go back.
You know, you can do it with all the computers in the
They're
world.
so
and
sophisticated today that it
Yeah.
almost doesn't mean anything anymore. Now write me a good story.
You want to go up and see where we built the school teacher's house? Yeah, our house is right on the corner here. Where this house is now, except that ours was closer to the street.
And ours was nicer.
Well, it was smaller.
Well, it was just a right angle. You know, facade and a little backing on the inside, so when they'd open the door, everything seemed okay.
You see, the front door of our house was pretty much in here. Was right about here when poor Suzanne Plachette was killed by the birds.
Yeah.
Kathy! Where's Kathy?
Wow. Oh, here we go. All right, give me the word.
We're rolling.
What is it? Look.
We've got to get the children out of here.
All right, children, now quiet. Quiet. Miss Daniels would like to see how we conduct ourselves during a fire drill. I would like you to show her how quiet and obedient you can be. We're going out of school now. I want those of you who live nearby to go directly home. I want the rest of you to go down the hill all the way to the hotel. Now, is that clear? Melanie? I want you to go as quietly as possible. Do not make a sound until I tell you to run.
I think we were in the street when we shot that.
All right, John, you lead the way.
I think that the shot where the children left the school is probably something like this.
Yeah,
Don't you think? Because then they came and they ran right back, and then they ran past us, and then we picked them up in town.
And then we dollied down in the other street.
Yeah.
With all the other stuff.
And we did a lot of that in the studio.
On the studio, yeah.
With
because
the
we photographed all those buildings. Remember?
Yeah, right. Right. Huh.
I remember running with a butterfly net in this area, trying to catch the birds.
Everybody became a bird wrangler.
The kids running down there.
Birds are not aggressive creatures, miss. It is mankind, rather, who insists upon making it difficult for life to exist upon this planet.
To me, the birds represented nature's rebellion against man's disregard for nature in general. And man forgets that he needs nature's help.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, there's the usual oh, look at the seal.
What was that, an otter?
A seal.
Oh, a seal.
At any rate, that seal interrupted me. What were we talking about?
Good question. I forgot completely.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else that you can recall, or anything? Because I'm beginning to see more and more birds here, and I'm beginning to think that things are going to happen again.
You think they're going to gather?
Well, there's one up on the rooftop there. They're watching.
And they're looking at us with some kind of thought.
Yeah, yeah. And they're saying they're back?
Yeah. Yeah, you can't look at some of these animals and not wonder. 37 years ago when we did the birds, people were willing to believe that this was happening.
We had to get them to attack us by throwing bread out of a boat and having them come in and attack us, but these were real birds.
Now, this wouldn't have been difficult to get all these birds, millions of birds, more birds than we had.
Oh my God, you could fill a sky with them, you know, just double them, press a button.
Right. And almost anybody in their living room can do the same thing with their own computer.
And scare themselves.
Right.
Well, I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. It's nice to see this place and smell the sea air, but it's a different place.
Yeah. The problem of going back to Bodega Bay for me would be that I'd be missing all those wonderful people that worked with us, like George Tomasini and Bob Burks.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
You'd be reminded of their loss, our loss.
It was quite a group. Good
bunch.
Yeah.
I think we're, are you and I the only ones left?
Not so loud.
I look back on the film, which had a lot of imperfections, which, as I look back, didn't matter. The imperfections were part of the film process. If you made it today, it would be absolutely perfect. Every bird would be in place, and there would be millions of them. There'd be nothing left to the imagination. I think in our version of the birds, you could imagine a lot of things. What wasn't seen was as important as what was. My wife, Bess, said that almost every project needs what she called a spoiled cook. That was somebody who went in and spoiled the perfection of the project to the point where it was human. Somebody who broke it down a little. And I always think that that was a very interesting observation, because we're not perfect.
Welcome to Hollywood!
I thought it would never happen to me again, but again I have locked my keys in the car.
You sure you don't have a window that's down a little bit, huh? In your car?
Tight.
You know,
Very
the
tight.
way you said tight reminded me, during, there was a big hippie festival back east years ago, and these rich Jewish ladies let their house be used by these hippies. And they were talking amongst each other, which I heard them talking. And one of them says, well, they were really nice. They're very free, these hippie kids and so forth. They're really interesting, free people. But you know, my rose garden fucked flat.
Yeah. Well, Haskell Wexler is unique. He's done a lot of films which were dealing with social problems around the world. See, if you work with somebody like Haskell, you're working with someone who has the sensitivity to explore the material and somebody you can talk to.
Bob, you mentioned that you hadn't seen the Thomas Crown Affair.
The new one, no.
The new one.
No.
I haven't seen it either. but what's your feeling about that? Some people have talked about the old one since the new one was made. We worked on the old Thomas Crown Affair.
Well, the Thomas Crown Affair was an intriguing idea. The writers had developed this story out of his own idea of could he rob a bank.
Don't move. All right, sit down and shut up.
The exploration of the attitude toward money
of the various people involved intrigued us all without really quite pinpointing it. There was a sense of mystery, a sense of, I think it occurs in a lot of good dramatic work in which you ask the audience to wonder. And why is it that I find Thomas Crown Affair, as done in that period, more interesting than the remake of Thomas Crown Affair? Because in the remake, they had more information and they used too much. The Windmills of Your Mind is a man in a single place glider. And later, he said, well, let's put the girl in it. This wasn't what Thomas Crown Affair was about. We didn't put the girl in the airplane. He was alone. So that made it more of a comment on the character. And I think we look back on films which were searching for essential truths, sometimes in abstract means. These are the aspects of storytelling that we're missing.
I agree. I think it's true. I think it's true not just in our business. I think it's true culturally. Everything has to be canned. It has to be direct. It has to be commercially accessible. And I think that we're pretty well stuck with that. I guess the big point I'm trying to make is that films have always been commercial, you know. They've always been, no one ever wanted to make a film and say, I don't want anybody to see it. But people did say, I want to make this film. And I want to make this film because I believe in it.
Take all necessary precautions to protect the policeman.
Stop you!
Look out, asshole! It's real!
The mayor of Chicago.
It has to do with your view of life. It has to do with what you consider being an artist is. Just take the simple matter. There's a lot of discussion of violence, for example. We're dealing with a culture which believes in dehumanizing, and when you can dehumanize certain people, you can do things to them. You can do just as they do in the movies, because violence has a form where the good guy can do bad things to the guy who is the bad guy. Now, that relates to the psychology of most films. And I think that many artists don't want to be a part of that. There's more to life than retribution. There's more to life than getting back. You know what, you should talk, like in Cold Blood was black and white, anamorphic, and you should talk to Conrad, because...
We did.
Oh, you did talk to Conrad?
Yeah, we talked to Conrad.
I love Conrad. You don't fuck with Conrad. He's just absolutely...
He has no phony quality at all. Of all the cinematographers that I have known, worked with, the one that impressed me most, because I was always meeting him at museums and theaters, that was Connie Hall.
Looks like an art director lives here, that's for sure, because it's so artistic and it's...
messy.
Well, but that's good, then, rather than being anally neat or something like that.
That we're not.
Yeah, I see an apartment near where I first moved when they were building the freeway from Coenga Pass in 1946 and 47. I lived right near the freeway. Used to fly kites on it. Before, Before it was a freeway, it was just Coenga Pass with 2-lane road.
Oh, the pass is right up here, yeah.
Yeah. And the streetcars in Hollywood. I wish we had streetcars still, don't you?
Oh, they were great. The red
weren't
cars.
they wonderful? Yeah, it's wonderful.
Marvelous transportation system.
And we tore it all down.
Good night, Sam.
Good night. What happened to the old bank? It was beautiful. People kept robbing it. It's a small price to pay for beauty.
One that we worked on together, it's one of my favorites, was In Cold Blood.
It's not easy.
No. It's violent, but it's psychological violence.
Yes. You had to be drawn into a kind of a sympathetic understanding
of the boys,
of the human condition that was involved.
Absolutely. I mean, we saw where they came from, where they lived, how they related to their parents, all of that kind of thing, which is important to, like, even though they're the bad guys in the film.
This was a well-documented production, and Truman Capote had been right with these boys all the time they were in prison, and he was trying to get at the humanity of the story and the truth. Well, so was Richard. Richard was interested in truth, I'll say that for him.
So, Bob, what did you have to build for this film?
Well, a prison and that sort of barn at the side of the prison for the hanging.
We couldn't get into it, and it was exactly the perfect duplicate of Death Row at the Kansas State Penitentiary. Easy to shoot in, but it was awful. It was scary.
The second floor is Death Row.
They took us to the real hangman's facility at Kansas City prison, and we saw it, and it was, he built it, and it was just exactly, looked exactly the same, you know what I mean? It was made out of raw wood, not painted, not stained. Yeah, exactly.
It was a storage shed at the side of the prison.
Full of old barbed wire fencing and, barrels and gunny sacks and all kinds of things like that.
Unpleasant.
Very unpleasant.
Well, for me it was unpleasant.
It's about death.
It's about death, about capital punishment, which I'm against, so.
Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil.
Is God in this place too?
That's the kind of violence I don't mind doing, because it's real, and and a human aspect to it, and a political aspect, and every other kind of extra. So it's fascinating. The idea that Richard had was to use the places where the actual stories took place. We shot in the real house. The Clutter House. The Clutter House, and we shot in bedrooms where they were murdered, in the basement where they were killed. think artist is a frame of mind.
Sure.
You know, it's the need to communicate. Art is about communication, and you don't do it for yourself. You do it. You do it for yourself, but you don't just take it then and put it away or anything like that. It's about communicating.
Right.
It's about getting that emotion out of your soul and onto a piece of canvas or into a musical instrument. And it's the same with cinema. It's about bringing a story out.
Feelings.
Yeah,
emotions.
feelings, emotions, and things like that in order to communicate something that you believe about to somebody else.
Right.
To somebody else. When we were in the Kansas City Penitentiary.
Are you talking the rain sequence?
Yeah, I'm talking about the set you built in a stage at Columbia.
Right, the hanging barn or whatever it was.
I forget what you had out there, but it was a big open yard, probably a backing, as I remember, and that sort of thing. And there was a light outside coming through the window. And there was a little desk lamp where the chaplain was reading from the Bible. And the rain that you had put along the edges there came down and splattered on the sill, and then formed sort of a mist, which then formed heavy enough droplets so that eventually they began to sort of worm their way down. And when I was lighting the stand-in, I noticed it looked like these were tears flowing down his face. And I thought, oh my God, this is incredible. I remember the first piece of film I shot and how it influenced me, how it viscerally influenced me about the power of the visual image, how you could use it to tell stories about the human condition that would entertain and move people, and through these stories, perhaps help influence to make a better world for everybody. You gotta enjoy life when you have the chance.
Yeah, it's short enough, isn't it?
It certainly is.
Even if you go a long way around like I'm doing.
Well, you're doing great. You've got teaching and taking care of your wife and making documentaries. And I got a long ways to go to do what you've done. Yeah. Bob.
Good night.
Hey, good night.
Past my bedtime.
Yeah. Oh, I got it. So nice to be part of something like that.
Oh, yeah. Terrific.
He is still around as long as the films are still there.
What's that?
He is still around as long as the films are there.
Is this us?
This is us.
Connie?
Good night.
Great evening.
It was a great evening. You got a legacy of stuff that to be proud of.
Thanks, Connie.
I'm glad I had the chance to meet with you.
Well,
take care, huh?
Great.
Good night.
Had a knack for hiring strange people. Remember Will Cox?
That was me.
You, me, Al, four poster bed.
Al, you should have a cane.
No, can't use it. If I could see, I would use a cane.
God, this is pathetic. Three old farts.
Old soldiers.
Excuse the language, but Jesus, I want to tell you.
See, we were pretty good friends at the time. Well, we still are, but I mean, we see much more of each other. We would lay on the floor, listen to, have a music session all afternoon. We did this fairly frequently. So this is one thing the studio did for me, anyway, since I'd been there for so long. They put me into management.
I'd love to gain complete control.
Well, Al is kind of extraordinary with failing eyesight. He still goes to movies, and since he knows movies so well, he listens and he can imagine the scene.
Probably better than some
I think it's better, the better way to see it.
He probably visualizes better sets than are put in the picture, you know.
Right.
I bet you do, Al. I'm sure Bob told you the same thing. I've just had a fantastic life, and I've loved every minute of it. I just love to do pictures. Boy, once I get on the stage and those saws, I can hear those saws and the hammering, and the decorators there, and we're deciding about this. We're talking about wallpapers or what we should do. It's wonderful, you know. It's just, it's kind of, as you get older, it's like an old security blanket having these friends around, and there's only very few of us left. I think Albert Nozaki and Bob and I and maybe draftsman John Dale are the only ones that are living from that group there in those wonderful heydays of the studio system. It gives me great pleasure, because we just have a wonderful time. We're just talking about things that happened, and it's, as you grow older, those are things that are very important to me. I can't live in the past, as you've got to, but it's wonderful to have those remembrances of all these wonderful times in this great business.
Gee, this is great in here.
Getting enough chimes?
Well,
You've worked as a production designer, as an art director, as an illustrator. Which job was most
satisfying, or the
most satisfying experience?
Is doing storyboards, because there's a place where you are in a room and you're practically a whole studio yourself, and you just draw. Just the idea of creating your idea, you're kind of directing on visually on sketching, and that is very satisfying. You ask people, it's like individual, like, you see, we all became stars. And the cameraman is a star, we all know who he is, the production designer is a star. When you read the critics, they will talk about them as if they know what they're talking about, And each one becomes a star and separates from the others. And yet you can't become a star without the other star. It's together. That's my problem.
Erickson, George Jenkins, Harold Michelson.
Well, I hope someday that there will be a renaissance and that we will reverse the tide that has gone in favor of business and have an artistic renaissance.
I think there will
and
be.
bring everybody in and make that something that you can like, that serves you economically, so you can raise children and families and
Sure.
Have a house and have a life, you know.
Well, that's what happened in the Renaissance. It followed the Dark Ages.
Right.
When things were pretty dismal. And we had a Renaissance.
Yeah. We need another one, don't you think?
We know, but I think it'll come.
I hope so.
Maybe not in my time.
Yeah, not in my time either, I doubt it. But somewhere down the line.
You see, what's so great about Conrad is he always had hope.
Yeah.
He always had this up in front, and that's what's beautiful about him, you know. He knew the scar. He always had hope. Yeah.
I guess we live in hope, don't we?
This is not, you know, I hate to think that what Bob and I are saying are a couple of old farts complaining because it's not the way it used to be. It never was great, really. But was great was I was trying to make it great, you see.
After the thing was over last night, we were on our way out. The press wanted to photograph me with certain people, you know, like the winners, and three of us old codgers, you know, with canes and wheelchairs and all that. But you're recognized, but then you don't have much more time. So it's tinged with goodbyes almost.
And if you can make your connection to the future is in the young filmmakers all over the world. You maybe shouldn't even say filmmakers. It's all these people who are trying to find out what the truth about the human condition is. There are all kinds of ways of getting at it technically, but essentially we're telling a story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Maybe not even an end.